That was due to watching other runners and deciding that I'd tried everything to get faster except changing my technique. So I went to see a biomechanic, and he showed me what I was doing, and after that, over the next year or two, I started working on my technique, and that's when all the improvements happened. Yeah, well, 36 was my personal best at 45. I got it down to 33 something with heavy training by about 2005. And then once I changed my technique, I got it down to 31.50. So a massive improvement. Well, I was the first, which was very pleasing. For the 55 age group, it's 1,500 meters, the mile, the 3,000, the 5,000, and the 10,000 meters. More efficient running, better technique. Yep, that's definitely the answer. It's not extra training. I was already training as hard as I could. In fact, I was probably training slightly less when I hit those times than bashing my body with heavy training beforehand. I was probably around about 100k a week. I think I'd have to check my records, but about that. Before that, I was probably running 120, 130, maybe 140 some weeks.
Quite a lot. You're running a lot less than that now, aren't you?
I am, yes, at the moment. Yeah, been taking a little bit of a breather. I think it's probably going to end up, if you really want to get to the top, you are going to have to do a fairly high mileage, probably 80k a week, something like that, if you're running shorter distances. Maybe if you're going into marathons, then you might have to do a bit more. But my last marathon I ran on something like, well, under 100k a week without any extra training.
You seem to achieve an awful lot on like 40 or 50k a week.
Yes, yeah. I recently ran a couple of park runs. My average distance is 25k a week, and I managed a couple of 17:10s, 17:12 for 5k on the road, barefoot too. So, but that's slightly faster than with shoes. Yes. Well, I think you can get the most precise technique, the best possible technique without shoes. Any shoe will interfere with your technique. So, and a lot of good runners I know train when they can without shoes. Technique sessions without shoes. So you can learn to run well without the shoes, and then you take that through to wearing shoes, as long as they are thin and flat and flexible. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting the ground harder and working the body a lot harder. If you put a soft, non-level base on the shoe, i.e. a shoe with a drop, I have no idea why there's a drop on the shoe, I can't think of any physical reason, then you're changing your stance even when you're stationary. The drop on the shoe will push your knees forwards, which means you basically have to squat a little bit. So you're putting pressure on your quads and on your knees when you're just standing still. So your spine is not aligned as it should be. That gives you a much less spring in your legs when you're in that flex position. And there are only two ways of getting your stride length. One is to put your leg out in front of you, which is extremely damaging and very limiting. And the other way is to leave the ground. And you need to have your your Achilles tendon, your calf muscles fully extended or almost fully extended, to give you a good spring off the ground. So if you build up the heel in the shoe, you're forced to actually put the foot in front of you a little more. You're forced to overstride. And that means when you're moving and your foot lands well in front of you, it creates a lot more force. So you're going to hit the ground harder because you've got the soft shoes on. The softness of the shoe will also affect it. It's like running on sand or soft ground. If you were to land the shoe nicely underneath you, it would squash down and you'd fall over, you'd overbalance forwards. So to compensate for that, you have to land that shoe further in front of you. You have to change your technique and push your foot a little bit forwards in order to give the shoe time to compress. So having a spongy shoe is going to make you overstride. Have a heel raise in the shoe is going to make you overstride. Well, overstriding just means that your foot is landing too far further in front of you than it should. Well, that's obviously a braking force, and then the faster you go, the bigger that force. And it doesn't matter how you strike the ground, and I use the term strike because that's probably what you'll be doing, hitting it hard. If you land on your heel, on the forefoot or the whole foot, if the foot's in front of you, you're going to have to brake, absorb that impact, and then you're going to have to push off hard in order to replace the speed that you've just lost. Whereas a good runner lands near vertically aligned, taking full advantage of the spring in their legs, and they instantly bounce back off the ground again. So that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to be precise and land as near to vertically aligned as possible to use the full amount of elasticity in our legs to get us off the ground. Well, yes, because it's the only problem in running. Your foot could technically land behind you, in which case you would either fall over or you'd be accelerating, or your foot can land in front of you, which means you are braking. It's the only way to stop is to put your leg in front of you. It means you're braking, absorbing, and then pushing to replace your lost energy. Or the third place your foot could land when you're running at a constant speed is in between the two, which is as near as possible to your whole body being vertically aligned. And that's the position that you will brake less and you will spring the most. And springing off the ground is the way to get a good stride length. You bounce and you fly. You might be able to get away with overstriding, and there are a lot of good performing runners who do for maybe 10, 20 years, but eventually it's going to hurt you in the hips or the knees. Change as young as you can, or if you're a parent, don't put your children in shoes that are unstably high and angled with a drop. Some people say if you're overstriding, medical professionals even, people are overstriding, they should do more shorter steps. But in fact, that just means you do more shorter overstrides. Your technique is exactly the same, you're just doing quicker, shorter steps. Whereas if you learn to land vertically aligned or balanced, then what will happen actually is your stride length will increase because you fly more, and your cadence will also increase because you spend less time on the ground waiting to catch up with your foot that's been landed in front of you. Yes, of course. Well, shoes really, in my opinion, should be for protection, basically, from cold ground, hot ground, and rough ground. Apart from that, you might need something to protect you if you're running badly or long, which is more or less the same thing, because you'll have more of an impact with the ground. But basically, running barefoot is going to help you be a precise runner, which means it doesn't matter how hard the surface is, with your soft feet landing in a progressive and smooth manner, you just don't feel any impact at all. Yes, it's nicer, and it's slightly lumpy, so your foot supinates, pronates, you land slightly forward, slightly back, but on average we're trying to get a perfectly aligned, vertically aligned landing, but it works every part of your foot because your foot's always adjusting. When people wear shoes a lot, especially shoes that are raised up at the heel and have turned up toes or are very thick, then their feet atrophy, the muscles in their feet atrophy. They just can't even walk on a slightly hard surface without it hurting. I won them in the last 3 I've won without shoes on.
You're running barefoot?
Barefoot, yeah, because I prefer that if I can. No concrete pathways. Yeah, they're perfect for running on, in my opinion.
You're some kind of nutcase, aren't you?
I run very precisely. So, and I find shoes with shoes on, even 5mm flat shoe, I hit the ground harder because I lose the feeling between my feet and my brain. You can adjust, constantly adjust if you can feel the ground. As soon as you take that away, your landings are heavier.